Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO. We go to the phones. Our next guest, Republican strategist Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Chad. How about you?
Doing great. Let's start off with some of the national scene. Obviously, another turn in the presidential election with President Trump coming down with coronavirus over the weekend. He's back at the White House now. How do you think this may impact the election moving forward?
Yeah, I kind of see two ways. One, it takes the president off the campaign trail with, less than 30 days left. That's not ideal. We'll see how long he's going to be kept in the White House, maybe 3 or 4 more days, 5 days at most, I would think, and then he's probably back at it towards the end of the week and the weekend. I think the second way that it hurts the Trump campaign is it brings COVID back into the American psyche even more so than it was. It becomes more of a voting issue, more of something to consider, questions about how the administration handled the response, about how serious the president took it, and statements he made throughout the last few months. So I really think from those two perspectives, this has set them back. It's put them on defense for a week or so, and there are not many weeks left.
Yeah. It seems like at least the news media is a little bit more interested in the upcoming VP debate. Normally these debates are, kind of a do no harm type of debate. They're not really watched that much, except by the diehard political folks who like watching these debates. Do you think that more people are going to tune in to the Pence-Harris debate, and do you think it matters much more this go around than previous VP debates?
I don't think so. I don't think the stakes are that high. I mean, I don't think the audience will be that large tonight. I think you had something like 65 or 70 million people tune into the first presidential debate just on television alone, not including digital audiences. I think you'll have, half that, maybe less tonight. I do think it matters because people want to see who the vice president is, if they're prepared to be president, how it affects the campaign. There are obviously going to be huge questions on COVID. But I don't think people vote for vice president. And so unless there's just a huge development tonight, I think it probably doesn't matter very much.
Yeah, I mean, normally it's one of those where as long as you don't harm the top of the ticket, nobody cares. Nobody cares about the VP. To me, maybe a few more people are interested in what Kamala has to say, just because, Trump is. I think the Trump campaign's done a fairly good job saying that she's going to be kind of the leader inside the White House. It's going to be interesting where she comes from on some of this stuff, just because. She was the most liberal senator in the U.S. Senate in 2019, and you've got Joe out there trying to stay away from the leftists and the socialists these days.
Yeah, there will be some interest tonight in how she does, how she handles herself, how she answers her past criticisms of Vice President Biden, how she squares her positions with his. She has a reputation for being a good debater, for being a sharp prosecutor, so we'll see how she does tonight. I think in some ways Pence is going to be facing a real challenge. We'll see how he does. I think there will be some interest in just learning more about Kamala Harris. She's not well known. She hasn't been a national figure, but despite running for president.
Yeah. Let's take a focus more statewide here. We're 28 days now away from the election. We've got early voting that begins next week here in Texas. It looks like Democrats are going to start spending a lot more money inside Texas. I think the Biden folks are going to spend $6 million or so, and you've got outside groups that are going to be dropping a lot of money. How do you think the Texas House looks right now? How do you think things look statewide at this point in the election?
Yeah, I mean, look, here's what's happening under the surface. I think over the last 2 weeks, really the last week, I think polling that's being conducted by campaigns is showing Republicans losing ground and Democrats gaining ground. You're seeing that in congressional races. You're seeing that in legislative races. And I think that's probably a big part of why Biden's team decided to make this investment, because they really had resisted investing at all in Texas. Now, look, $6 million isn't going to be enough for them to win Texas, but it could be enough to narrow the margin where they can perhaps take the Texas House back, perhaps win a couple extra congressional seats. So, look, Trump has to stabilize his numbers. He's got to get back on offense, got to get this COVID stuff behind him and get back on the campaign trail safely, and get back to making this an election about who can rebuild the American economy. If it's an election entirely about who responded, how Trump responded to COVID, that's an election that Trump's going to lose. If he can make it instead about the economy and crime in our cities and the Supreme Court, that's an election he can win.
Yeah. Speaking of, some of these polls that are out there, you got a Florida poll out today showing that Trump and Biden are tied in Florida. Yet you had another national poll showing a 14 to 16 point lead for Joe Biden. Which poll are you more likely to believe in?
Yeah, I don't take national polls seriously at this point. The range can tell you something, but it doesn't tell you really what you need to know. What you need to look at are the battleground state polls. The NBC poll that was taken over the weekend that showed Biden up 14 tested registered voters, which is just ridiculous.
At this point, that's crazy.
Days. It's insane. It proves nothing. All that matters is likely voters, which captures enthusiasm, which captures people who've made up their mind or who have decided to vote. So it's the battleground state polls. And look, a lot of the battleground state polls have moved in Biden's direction. I saw one on Michigan this morning. I think that had Biden up 8. I don't take a lot of these polls too seriously. I do think they're oversampling Democrats. So it's not really a snapshot. But again, if Trump has lost ground in the last week or so, then Biden has gained ground, and that's not where Trump wants to be. If you're behind and you're losing ground, that's not where you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, tell folks how they can sign up for your newsletter, and also tell them about your latest guest on your podcast.
Yeah, so the newsletter is called Must Read Texas. We take all the top news from around the state, put it in one clean, easy-to-read email, and deliver it to inboxes by 9 a.m. each weekday morning. You can sign up for a free one-week trial or subscribe for $3.50 a month at mustreadtexas.com. The podcast is called Mac on Politics. It's available on the iTunes Store, on Google Play, on Stitcher, and on Spotify. Most recent guest is with an author named David Landau, who wrote an interesting book about two brothers on the opposite side of the Cuban Revolution. It's a fascinating story about how socialism has failed in Cuba. It's called Brothers from Time to Time. Definitely an interesting conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And Matt, appreciate your time as always. Next week, of course, is going to be interesting because not only do we have early voting that starts here, but also it looks like the Senate's going to move forward with their confirmation hearings on Amy Coney Barrett. So we'll get some updates from you on that next week.
Sounds good. Take care.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.